It was raining hard, and I hadn't planned to stop. But the vacancy sign flickered at just the right moment. Something about it felt like it had been waiting for me. I was driving back from nowhere, really. A weekend trip that fell through at the last minute. My friend Sarah got sick. I'd already taken the time off work, so I drove anyway, just to feel like I was going somewhere. The highway stretched out in that particular way it does when you're alone. Empty, patient, like it knows you better than you know yourself. The rain started around hour 3, not the gentle kind that makes you sleepy, the angry kind that pounds your roof and blurs the world beyond your windshield. I leaned forward, squinting through the wipers. They made that grinding sound old cars make when they're trying too hard. That's when I saw it. A motel I swear hadn't been there when I passed the stretch earlier, the Pine View Motor Lodge. One story, shaped like an L. Yellow brick that looked sick under the parking lot lights. Each room had a door painted red, like a row of mouths waiting to swallow something. I slowed down. Not because I needed a place to stay, because something about the sign made me pause. It buzzed with that specific frequency that gets under your skin, the kind of sound fluorescent lights make when they're dying. But the sign wasn't fluorescent. It was neon. And the buzz shouldn't have been that loud from the road. The parking lot held maybe 6 cars, all different decades. A blue sedan from the 80s, a pickup truck that looked like it remembered the 70s, a small red car so faded it might have been pink once. None of them looked like they'd moved recently. Dust on the hoods, leaves caught under the wipers. I pulled in anyway. The office sat at the corner where the 2 wings of the motel met. Through the rain-streaked window, I could see a woman behind the desk. She didn't look up when my headlights swept across the glass. Just kept reading something I couldn't make out. Her hair was brown, pulled back in a way that made her face look sharp, angular, like someone had carved her from wood and forgot to sand down the edges. I turned off the engine. The rain drummed harder against the roof. For a moment, I just sat there, watching the woman through the window. She still hadn't looked up, hadn't moved at all, actually. Even her hand, holding whatever she was reading, stayed perfectly still. The door chime played 3 notes when I stepped inside. The woman looked up then, smiled with her mouth, but not her eyes. They were gray, the color of old television static. The office smelled like coffee that had been sitting too long, and something else, something sweet and sharp at the same time, like flowers left in water until they started to rot. "Terrible night," she said. Her voice was soft, too soft for the weather outside. "Yeah," I said. "You have any rooms?" She didn't ask for my name, didn't ask how many nights, just reached under the counter and pulled out a key. Room 7. The number was written on the tag in red ink that looked slightly smudged, as if someone had touched it before it dried. 45 for the night, she said. I handed her 2 20s and a 5. She slid the money into a drawer without counting it, without giving me change either. But 45 was what she'd asked for, so I didn't say anything. Room 7 is just down that way, she said, pointing toward the right wing. Quiet spot. You'll like it. Something in the way she said quiet made me pause. Not quiet like peaceful, quiet like empty, like something had been removed and left a space behind. I took the key. It was heavier than it should have been. Brass, maybe. or something that wanted to be brass but hadn't quite figured out how. "Thank you," I said. She was already looking back down at whatever she'd been reading, as if I'd never been there at all. Outside, the rain had softened to a steady whisper. I drove my car around to the side of the building where room 7 waited. The red door looked darker than the others, not because of shadow, because the paint itself seemed deeper, hungrier. The key turned easily. Too easily, like the lock had been expecting it. The room looked like every motel room I'd ever seen. Beige walls, brown carpet with a pattern designed to hide stains, a bed with a spread that might have been orange once, a dresser with a mirror above it, a television on a stand that had seen better decades. But something was off. I couldn't name it at first. Everything was where it should be. The proportions felt right. The smell was that universal motel smell of cleaning products and years of different people sleeping in the same space. Then I realized what it was. The room was too quiet. Not just quiet like the woman had promised. Quiet like sound went to die here. I can hear my own breathing, my heartbeat, the soft rustle of my jacket when I moved. But nothing from outside. No rain, no traffic, no hum from the air conditioning unit under the window. I walked to the window and pulled back the curtain. My car sat exactly where I'd parked it. The parking lot looked the same, but I couldn't hear any of it. As if the glass wasn't glass at all, but something thicker, something that didn't just block sound, but absorbed it. I let the curtain fall back. The bathroom was small and clean, white tiles that reflected the light in ways that made the space feel larger than it was. I brushed my teeth and washed my face. The water was warm. The towels were soft. Everything normal. But when I looked in the mirror above the sink, something felt wrong. Not wrong like my reflection was different. Wrong like it was a half-second slow. Like it had to think about what I was doing before it could copy me. I raised my hand. My reflection raised its hand. I smiled. My reflection smiled. I stepped to the left. My reflection stepped to the left. Everything perfect. Everything exactly as it should be. So why did I feel like I was watching someone else pretend to be me? I clicked off the bathroom light and walked back into the main room. The bed looked comfortable enough. The sheets were clean. The pillow felt like it had been fluffed recently. I changed into the t-shirt and shorts I'd packed for sleeping, plugged in my phone to charge, set my alarm for 7 in the morning. All the normal things you do when you're staying somewhere that isn't home. But as I pulled back the covers, I noticed something. The sheets were warm. Not warm like they'd been sitting under lights. Warm like someone had been sleeping in them recently. I told myself it was from a heating system. Or maybe the previous guest had checked out late and housekeeping had just finished cleaning. There were reasonable explanations for warm sheets. I got into bed anyway. The mattress felt soft in all the right places. The pillow cradled my head perfectly. I should have fallen asleep immediately. I was tired. It had been a long day of driving and disappointment. But I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence, and slowly, very slowly, I began to hear something else. A soft clicking sound, like someone tapping their fingernails against wood. It seemed to come from inside the walls. Not loud, just persistent, like a code being tapped out over and over. Click, click, pause, click, pause, click, click, click. I sat up and listened harder. The sound stopped. I lay back down. After a minute, it started again. Click, click, pause, click, pause, click, click, click. I got up and pressed my ear to the wall. Nothing. Just a solid feel of drywall and insulation. But when I got back into bed, the clicking resumed. It went on like that for what felt like hours. Every time I tried to focus on it, it would stop. Every time I relaxed, it would start again. Like something behind the walls was playing a game with me. Eventually, exhaustion won. My eyes grew heavy. The clicking faded into background noise. Sleep pulled me down into dreams I wouldn't remember. But just before I went under completely, I could have sworn I heard something else. Breathing. Not mine. Someone else's. Slow and steady. Like someone lying in bed next to me, perfectly still, waiting for me to fall asleep so they could start moving again. I woke up to silence that felt too thick. My phone showed 3 a.m, but the numbers looked strange, blurry around the edges, like they were trying to be something else. The clicking had stopped, but the breathing continued. So soft, I almost convinced myself it was the air conditioning. Except there was no air conditioning. The unit under the window sat dark and still. I reached for the bedside lamp. The light came on, but it felt dim, weak, like it was pushing through something that didn't want to let it pass. Everything in the room looked exactly as I'd left it. My suitcase by the dresser, my shoes by the door, my jacket hanging over the back of the single chair. But the mirror above the dresser caught my attention. In the lamplight, it looked different. The glass seemed deeper, like I was looking into water instead of seeing a reflection. I got up and walked closer. My reflection wasn't there, not gone, just delayed. I stood directly in front of the mirror and saw the dresser behind me, the lamp, the edge of the bed, but not me. As if the mirror had decided I wasn't worth reflecting. I raised my hand. Nothing. I stepped to the side. Still nothing. Then slowly, like an image developing in old film, my reflection began to appear. Faint at first, just the outline of a person. Then gradually more solid, more real. But it wasn't looking at me. My reflection was looking at something behind me. Something I couldn't see when I turned around. Its eyes were focused on a point just over my left shoulder. Its expression was concerned, like it was watching something that worried it. I turned around again, nothing there but the wall. When I looked back at the mirror, my reflection was normal again, looking right at me, matching my movements perfectly. I backed away and sat on the edge of the bed. My hands were shaking slightly, not from cold, from something else. Something that didn't have a name yet. The television turned on by itself. No click of a button. No sound of electronics warming up. Just suddenly, there was light from the screen and static filling the room. But it wasn't random static. There was a pattern to it, a rhythm, like it was trying to form shapes, words. I picked up the remote from the nightstand, pressed power. Nothing happened. Pressed it again. The static continued, but now I could hear something underneath it. Voices, too quiet to make out words, too distant to identify. I tried changing channels. The numbers on the screen changed, but the static remained. Channel 2, Channel 7, Channel 15, all static, all with those faint voices humming underneath. On Channel 23, the static cleared for just a moment. I saw myself, sleeping in this bed, from an angle that wasn't possible. Like the camera was positioned inside the wall, looking down. I was curled on my side, facing away from where I was sitting now. My hair was longer than it should be. My skin looked pale, translucent, and standing next to the bed, just at the edge of the frame, was a shadow. Not a shadow cast by something else. A shadow that existed on its own. Tall and thin and slightly bent at the top, like it was leaning over to get a better look. The image lasted maybe 3 seconds, then back to static. I turned off the lamp and sat in the blue glow of the television. The voices under the static were getting clearer, not louder, just more focused. Like someone adjusting a radio until the signal came through. I could almost make out words. Almost. I got up and walked to the bathroom. Maybe if I splashed cold water on my face, this would all make sense. Maybe I was more tired than I thought. Maybe my mind was playing tricks. The bathroom mirror showed me perfectly. Every detail correct. Every movement matched exactly. Normal. But when I reached for the towel, my reflection didn't reach for the towel. It reached for something else. Something that wasn't there. Its hand grasped empty air while mine touched terry cloth. I dropped the towel and stepped back. My reflection stepped back too, but its eyes stayed focused on the spot where the thing I couldn't see was hanging. I looked at that spot. Nothing there but wall. When I looked back at the mirror, my reflection was normal again. Confused, frightened, matching my expression perfectly. I walked back to the main room. The static on the television had formed into something that almost looked like a face. Not quite human, not quite anything else. Just the suggestion of features in the gray and white noise. It was watching me. I'm sure of it now. The static face turned when I moved, followed me with eyes that weren't really there, but felt present anyway. I sat back down on the bed. The mattress felt different now, firmer, like it was pushing back against my weight, like it didn't want me there anymore. The breathing I'd heard before was louder now. Definitely not mine. Definitely not machinery. Someone else was in this room. Someone I couldn't see but could hear, could feel. I closed my eyes and tried to convince myself this was all stress, exhaustion, the strange effects of sleeping in an unfamiliar place. But when I opened them again, the static on the television had cleared completely. The screen showed my car in the parking lot. Real time. I could see the rain still falling, could see the other cars exactly where they'd been when I checked in. But mine was different. The driver's side door was open. I walked to the window and looked out. My car was closed up tight, locked, the way I'd left it. But on the television screen, the door hung open, and sitting in the driver's seat, barely visible in the parking lot lights, was someone wearing my jacket. They had their back to the camera, but I could see their hair, long, dark, like mine, but not quite. As I watched, the figure in my car turned around. It was me, but older, thinner, with eyes that held too much knowledge about things that hadn't happened yet. The me on the screen smiled and waved at the camera, then reached over and closed the car door. On the television, my car looked normal again. I looked out the window. Still normal. But now I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere, in some version of this moment, I was sitting in my car, waiting, watching myself through a window, wondering why I'd gone into a room that shouldn't exist. The static returned. The voices underneath grew louder, and for just a moment, I could swear I heard my own voice among them. asking someone, very quietly, if it was too late to check out. Sleep came in pieces after that. Small fragments of unconsciousness that felt more like forgetting than resting. In between, I lay listening to sounds that shouldn't exist. The soft shuffle of feet that stopped when I held my breath. The whisper of fabric against fabric, like someone adjusting clothes in the dark. When I finally fell deeply enough to dream, I found myself in a room that looked exactly like this one. Same beige walls, same brown carpet, same orange bedspread. But there was no door. In the dream, this didn't frighten me. It felt natural, expected, like doors were a luxury I'd never really needed anyway. I walked around the room, touching things that felt more real than real. The dresser was warm under my fingers. The mirror showed not my reflection, but the room as it had been hours ago. Empty, waiting. The television played the same static, but in the dream I could understand the voices perfectly. They were all me. Different versions, different ages, all talking at once. Comparing notes about rooms they'd stayed in. Rooms that had seemed normal at first. The youngest voice was excited. She'd just checked in somewhere new. The oldest voice was tired. She'd been traveling for years, looking for a way out. In the dream, I opened my mouth to join the conversation, but no sound came out. And slowly, I realized that my voice was already there, had always been there, would always be there. I was part of the static now. I woke with my face pressed against a pillow that smelled wrong. Not bad, just not like anything I recognized. Sweet and sharp and slightly metallic, like coins left in honey. The room was darker than it should be. My phone said 5 a.m, but no light came through the curtains, no hint of dawn approaching. I got up to check the window. Outside it was still night, but not the same night I'd gone to sleep in. This night felt older, thicker, like it had been going on for much longer than a few hours. The parking lot lights cast the same yellow glow. The same cars sat in the same spots, but now there were more of them. Small differences I might not have noticed if I hadn't been looking carefully. A green station wagon I hadn't seen before. A motorcycle covered with a tarp. A white van with mud on the license plate. And my car was gone. I pressed my face against the glass, looking left and right. Maybe I'd parked somewhere else. Maybe my memory was playing tricks. But no. The space where I'd left my car was empty. Just wet asphalt, reflecting the parking lot lights. I pulled on my jeans and grabbed the room key. The door opened easily, but the air outside felt wrong. Too warm for the season, too still for the weather I'd driven through. I walked to where my car should have been. There were no tire tracks, no oil stains, no sign that anything had ever been parked there. But the asphalt was warm under my bare feet. I looked around the parking lot. All the other cars looked settled, established, like they'd been there for months. Years, maybe. Dust on the hoods, leaves caught under the wipers, small plants growing up through the cracks near the tires. The office window was dark now. No woman behind the desk, no light inside at all. I walked over and tried the door, locked. I knocked softly, no answer. I knocked louder, still nothing. Through the glass, I could see the desk where the woman had been sitting. The chair was pushed back like someone had left in a hurry. But there was something on the desk now that hadn't been there before. A guest book, large, leather-bound, open to a page covered with handwriting. I pressed my face against the glass, trying to read it. The writing was small and cramped, but I can make out some of it. Room numbers, dates, names, number not names. The same name over and over. Mine. Different handwriting each time, but always my name. Going back months, years. And next to each entry, a single word. Occupied. I backed away from the window. My feet found wet grass that hadn't been there when I'd parked. The landscaping around the motel had changed, grown in, like time had been moving faster here than it should. I looked up at the vacancy sign. It was still flickering, but the letters were different now. Instead of vacancy, it read, "Welcome back." I ran back to room 7. The door was still open, spilling yellow light into the darkness. But when I stepped inside, something was different. The sheets on the bed were tucked differently than I'd left them. Tighter, more precise, like someone else had been sleeping there and tried to make it look untouched. My suitcase was in the same spot, but the zipper was open. Not all the way. Just enough to suggest someone had looked inside. My phone was still plugged in, but the charging cable was disconnected, coiled neatly on the nightstand like someone had been careful not to disturb anything else. I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to think. My car was gone. The motel had changed. Time felt loose and unreliable. But I wasn't panicked. That was the strangest part. I should have been terrified. Should have been calling for help, looking for answers, demanding explanations. Instead, I felt calm, settled, like this was exactly where I was supposed to be, like I'd been here before. The television turned on again, no static this time, just a clear, sharp image of the motel from above. As if someone was filming from a helicopter, I could see the parking lot, the office, the 2 wings of rooms, and I could see myself standing outside room 7, looking up at the sky. But I wasn't standing outside. I was sitting on the bed, watching myself on the screen. The me on the television waved. I didn't wave back, but somehow the motion felt familiar, like I'd done it before, like I'd do it again. The camera pulled back, showing more of the area around the motel. But there was nothing else there. No road, no highway, no other buildings, just the motel, sitting alone in a space that went on forever. And scattered around it, like islands in a dark ocean, were other motels, all identical, all with the same yellow lights and red doors. Each one had a single car in its parking lot. Each one had someone standing outside room 7. Each one had someone who looked exactly like me. I turned away from the screen, but the image was burned into my vision. All those versions of myself standing outside all those identical rooms, all looking up at the same invisible camera, all waving, all perfectly content to be exactly where they were. The breathing in the room was my own now, slow and steady and strangely peaceful, like I was finally learning how to sleep in a place that had been waiting for me all along. Morning never came. I waited by the window, watching for any hint of sunrise, but the sky stayed the same color, not dark exactly, just absent, like someone had forgotten to install daylight in this particular place. My phone still said 5 in the morning, had been saying 5 in the morning for what felt like hours. The numbers glowed steady and wrong, counting nothing. I needed to leave. The thought came clearly, like a voice from somewhere sensible. Get dressed, pack your things, find someone who can explain what happened to your car. I folded my clothes back into the suitcase. Everything felt normal under my hands. cotton and denim, the familiar weight of things that belonged to me. But when I tried to zip the case shut, my fingers moved slowly, like they were underwater. The room key sat heavy in my palm. I needed to return it, check out properly. Even if nothing else made sense, I could at least follow that simple rule. The hallway outside my door stretched in both directions, lined with red doors that all looked identical. But now I noticed things I'd missed before. Small differences. Door 5 had a scratch near the handle. Door 9 had paint that looked fresher than the others. And at the end of the hall, where the ice machine should have been, stood another door. Plain wood, no number, no red paint. Just a door that led somewhere I hadn't seen when I checked in. I walked toward the office instead. My feet made no sound on the concrete walkway. The air felt thick and still, like being inside a photograph. The office windows were dark, not just unlit, empty, like the space inside had been scooped out and replaced with nothing. I tried the door anyway. It opened easily. The lobby looked the same. Same desk, same chair, same smell of old coffee and dying flowers. But the woman was gone, not just away from her post, absent in a way that suggested she'd never been there at all. The chair where she'd sat was pushed back, but not carelessly, positioned exactly, like someone had measured the distance. The desk was clean, too clean. No papers, no pens, no sign that anyone had ever worked there. But the guest book was still open. I walked around the desk and looked at the pages. My name filled every line. Different dates going back months, years, decades maybe. The handwriting changed, but the signature stayed consistent. The same loops and angles I'd been making since high school. All the entries were for room 7, all marked occupied. I flipped through the pages, looking for other names, other guests. But it was just me, checking in over and over, an endless record of arrivals with no departures. At the bottom of the current page, in handwriting so fresh the ink still looked wet, was a new entry. Today's date. My name. Room 7. But I hadn't written it. The pen lay next to the book, still warm. I picked it up and tried to write something else. Anything else. But my hand wouldn't obey. The pen moved on its own, forming letters I wasn't choosing. Extended stay, it wrote. Indefinite checkout. I dropped the pen and backed away from the desk. It rolled off the edge and hit the floor, but made no sound. Behind me, someone cleared their throat. I turned around. The woman was back, sitting in her chair exactly as she'd been when I first walked in. Gray eyes, sharp features, smile that didn't reach beyond her mouth. "Is there a problem?" she asked. Her voice was the same, software too soft. But now I could hear something underneath it, an echo, like she was speaking from very far away. "My car," I said. "It's gone." She looked at me with polite confusion. "Car?" "I parked outside room 7, a blue Honda. It's not there anymore." She tilted her head slightly. "I'm sorry, but we don't allow cars in the guest areas. Insurance liability. But I drove here last night. You checked me in. I've never seen you before." She smiled wider. "But I'd be happy to help you with a room. We have a lovely one available. Room 7. Very quiet." The key appeared in her hand. Same brass weight. Same red number tag. "I'm already in room 7, I said. "Are you?" She consulted something under the desk. "According to our records, room 7 is vacant. Has been for quite some time." "I slept there last night." Last night. She repeated the words like they were foreign. I'm sorry, but what do you mean by last night? I stared at her. She stared back. Perfectly patient, perfectly helpful, perfectly wrong. What time is it? I asked. She glanced at a clock I hadn't noticed before. It sat on the desk, facing her. From where I stood, I could see it was blank. No numbers, no hands, just a white circle. Check-in time, she said, but I already checked in. Would you like room 7? It's very quiet. You'll like it. The key was still in her hand, waiting. I took it. What else could I do? How much? I asked. No charge, she said. You've already paid. When? When you always pay. I walked away from the desk. Behind me, I heard the soft rustle of papers. When I looked back, she was reading something. The same position she'd been in when I first arrived. But now I could see what she was reading. The guest book. And she was smiling. Not the polite, professional smile she'd shown me. Something else. Something private. Like she was reading the funniest story she'd ever seen. I walked back towards room 7. The hallway looked longer now. More doors than there had been before. But they all led to the same place. Behind me, very faintly, I could hear the woman laughing. Not loud. Just a soft, continuous sound. Like she'd heard the best joke in the world and couldn't quite stop finding it funny. Like she knew something about room 7 that I was just beginning to understand. The key turned in the lock like it had been waiting for me. Room 7 welcomed me back with its familiar wrongness. Same bed, same television, same mirror that showed too much and not enough. I set my suitcase by the dresser and tried to think logically. Cars don't disappear. Desk clerks don't forget guests from the night before. Time doesn't stop at 5 in the morning and stay there. But logic felt thin here, fragile, like it might break if I pressed too hard. I needed to leave, walk to the main road, flag down help, find a phone that worked properly. The room key went into my pocket. I left the suitcase. If this place wanted to keep my clothes, it could have them. Outside, the air tasted different, metallic, like breathing near power lines. The parking lot stretched out exactly as before. Same cars in the same spots, still no sign of mine. I walked toward where the road should be, past the parked cars, past the edge of the asphalt, past the scrubby grass and drainage ditch I remembered from driving in. But there was no road, just more grass, rolling away into distance that didn't seem to end. I turned around. The motel sat exactly where it should. Yellow lights glowing, red doors lined up like a mouthful of teeth. But behind it, instead of the highway I'd driven in on, there was only more empty space. I walked around the building, looking for any sign of how I'd gotten here. Tire tracks, a driveway, even a footpath, nothing. The motel sat alone in the middle of nowhere, like it had grown up from the ground instead of being built. I kept walking, away from the building, away from the parking lot, away from the only lights in what seemed like an endless dark. The grass was wet under my feet, not from rain, from something thicker, something that made each step feel deliberate and final. I walked for what might have been an hour. The motel's lights stayed visible behind me, but they never seemed to get any smaller, like the distance between us wasn't really changing. Ahead of me, the darkness continued. No horizon, no hills, no trees, just flat emptiness stretching out forever. I turned around and started walking back. The motel grew larger as I approached, Not gradually, all at once, like stepping through an invisible wall that separated far from near. The parking lot felt solid under my feet again, real. The yellow lights buzzed with their familiar electrical hum. I tried a different direction, followed what looked like it might be a road. Cracked asphalt that started at the edge of the parking lot and disappeared into the dark. But after a few dozen steps, the asphalt ended, just stopped, like someone had forgotten to finish it. Beyond that, more grass, more nothing. I followed the asphalt back to where it started, tried the other direction, same thing. A short stretch of road that led nowhere and ended in empty space. I was walking in circles now, around the motel, around the parking lot, looking for any break in the pattern, any way out that made sense. But every path led back to the same place, the same red doors, the same yellow lights, the same room 7 waiting with its door slightly open. A truck appeared on the horizon. At first I thought I was imagining it, a distant speck of light moving slowly across the darkness, but it grew larger, clearer, definitely a truck, definitely heading in my direction. I ran toward it, waving my arms, shouting for help. The truck slowed down as it approached. Old, red, paint faded to the color of dried blood, the kind of vehicle that looked like it belonged to another decade. It stopped a few feet away from me. The engine idled with a rough, throaty sound. The driver's side window rolled down. I looked at the person behind the wheel. It was me. Not someone who looked like me. Me, exactly me. Same face, same hair, same clothes I'd been wearing when I checked in. But older, tired, like she'd been driving for a very long time. She smiled and waved. "Need a ride?" she asked. Her voice was mine, but with an accent I didn't recognize. Southern, maybe, or just worn down by too many miles. "Where are you going?" I asked. "Same place you are," she said. "Always the same place." She gestured toward the passenger seat. "Hop in. No sense walking when you can ride." I backed away from the truck. "Who are you?" "I'm you," she said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "From down the road. Been driving this route for, how long now? Time gets funny when you're traveling." "What road?" "There is no road," she laughed. "There's always a road. You just have to know how to see it." She pointed past me toward the motel. "Besides, where else you gonna go? Room 7's waiting. Keys in your pocket. Might as well get comfortable." "I want to leave." "Course you do. That's what makes it interesting." She put the truck in gear. "See you around, probably sooner than you think." The truck pulled away, not fast, just steady, like she had all the time in the world. I watched the taillights disappear into the darkness, but instead of fading gradually, they just stopped, like someone had turned off a television. I was alone again, standing in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by nothing. The motel waited behind me, patient, inevitable. Room 7's door was still open. Light spilled out into the parking lot, making a path across the wet asphalt. I followed it back. What else could I do? Inside, everything was exactly as I'd left it. But on the nightstand, next to my phone, sat something new. A set of car keys, not mine. These were older, heavier, attached to a keychain shaped like a small red truck. I picked them up. They were warm. Outside, I could hear an engine idling, waiting. The truck keys felt wrong in my hand, too heavy, too warm, like they'd been in someone else's pocket for years. I set them back on the nightstand and picked up my phone instead, The screen showed full bars now. Perfect signal. Like the motel had decided to be helpful. I scrolled through my contacts and found Sarah's number. My best friend since college. The one person who would know my voice no matter what. The phone rang once, twice. On the third ring, she picked up. Hello? Her voice sounded exactly right. Same tone, same slight hoarseness she always had in the evening. But there was something underneath it, a distance, like she was speaking from very far away. Sarah, it's me, I said. Silence on the other end. Then, I'm sorry. Who is this? It's me, your friend. We were supposed to go to the coast this weekend, remember? I think you have the wrong number. Sarah, come on. It's me. We've been friends for 8 years. You were my maid of honor. I was yours. I've never been married, she said. Her voice was getting smaller, more distant. And I don't know anyone by your name. I didn't tell you my name. You didn't have to. The line went quiet. I could hear her breathing, slow and steady, and strangely peaceful. Sarah, please. Something's wrong. I'm at this motel and my car disappeared. And the woman at the desk doesn't remember checking me in and... The motel, she said. Her voice changed, got softer, more concerned. What motel? I don't know. The Pineview Motor Lodge, on the highway outside. You shouldn't tell people the name of the place. What? The name. You shouldn't say it out loud. Her voice was barely a whisper now, like she was afraid someone might overhear. Sarah, what are you talking about? I'm not Sarah. I told you, I don't know anyone by your name. Then how do you know about the motel? Everyone knows about places like that. They're everywhere. You just have to be unlucky enough to find one. I could hear something in the background now. Static. Like the television in my room. But this was coming through the phone. Listen to me. The voice that wasn't Sarah said. Don't say the room number out loud. Don't write it down. Don't think about it too hard. Why? Because that's how it knows you're ready. Ready for what? To stay. The static got louder. Under it, I could hear other voices, distant, familiar, all talking at once, about rooms and roads and keys that led nowhere. I have to go, the voice said. Wait, Sarah, please. I'm not Sarah, but I hope you find her. I hope you find everyone you've lost. The line went dead. I stared at the phone. The screen showed the call had lasted 3 minutes and 47 seconds. Sarah's name was still in my contacts. Her photo still smiled at me from the screen. But when I tried to call back, the number was disconnected. I scrolled through my other contacts, my parents, my sister, my co-workers, numbers I'd dialed hundreds of times. I tried my mother's cell phone. Hello, a woman's voice, older, tired. Mom, it's me. I think you have the wrong number, dear. No, Mom, it's your daughter. Please. I don't have a daughter. Click. I tried my sister. The number you have dialed is not in service. My boss. Who is this? How did you get this number? One after another. People who should know my voice, should recognize my name, should remember the years we'd spent together. But to all of them, I was a stranger. A wrong number. A mistake. I set the phone down and looked around the room. Everything was exactly the same. Beige walls, brown carpet, orange bedspread. But now it felt different. Not like a place I was staying temporarily. Like home. The television turned on by itself. No static this time. Just a clear image of a living room I recognized. My living room. My apartment. but someone else was living there. A woman who looked like me, but younger. She was sitting on my couch, watching my television, wearing clothes I'd never owned. She looked happy, settled, like she'd been there for years. On the coffee table next to her sat a photograph. I couldn't see it clearly, but I knew what it showed. Sarah and me at her wedding, both of us laughing, both of us young and certain that nothing would ever change. But in this version, the woman on my couch was the one standing next to Sarah. She was the maid of honor. She was the friend who'd made that trip to the coast. She was me, but better. Me, but real. The woman on the screen picked up the photograph and smiled. Then she looked directly at the camera, directly at me. "Thank you," she mouthed. The screen went black. I walked to the mirror above the dresser. My reflection looked back at me. Same face, same hair, same confused expression. But something was missing. A quality I couldn't name. A realness that had been there before. I looked like myself, but I felt like a copy. The phone rang. I picked it up without checking the number. "Hello. Is this room 7? The voice was young, female, scared. "Yes," I said. "I think I'm in trouble. I'm at this motel and my car's gone and nobody remembers me and—" "What motel?" I asked. "The Pineview Motor Lodge." I closed my eyes. "Don't say the room number out loud." "What?" "The room number. Don't think about it too hard." "How did you—" "Because that's how it knows you're ready." "Ready for what?" "To stay." I hung up the phone. Outside, I could hear a car pulling into the parking lot. New headlights swept across my window. A door slammed. Footsteps on concrete. Someone was checking in. Someone was about to discover that room 7 was exactly what they'd been looking for, even if they didn't know it yet. The footsteps outside stopped near my door. I heard the soft scrape of a key in a lock, but not my lock. One of the other rooms, farther down the hall. I waited for the sound of a door opening, closing, the settling noises people make when they're getting comfortable in a new place. But there was only silence. I walked to my window and looked out. A new car sat in the parking lot. Small, red, so faded it might have been pink once. The same car I had seen when I first arrived, but now it looked fresh, recently driven. Steam rose from its hood. The office window glowed with warm light. Through the glass, I could see the woman behind the desk. She was smiling at someone I couldn't see, handing over a key. Going through the same motion she'd gone through with me. But this time, I noticed something else. When she handed over the key, she glanced up, directly at my window. Her smile changed, became something private, something pleased, like she was sharing a joke with someone who would understand. I backed away from the window. The dresser drawer was slightly open. I didn't remember opening it, didn't remember looking inside. I pulled it out further, empty, mostly. Just the usual motel things. A Bible that looked like it had never been read. Some stationery with the motel's name printed at the top. A pen that didn't work. And at the back, a photograph. I picked it up, black and white, slightly blurry, like it had been taken with an old camera or copied too many times. It showed me sitting on the edge of this bed, same clothes I was wearing now, same tired expression, same confused look in my eyes. But I'd never sat like that, never posed for a picture in this room. In the photo, I was looking at something just off camera, something behind the photographer. My expression was concerned, like I was watching something that worried me. And there, At the very edge of the frame, just barely visible, was a shadow. Tall, thin, slightly bent at the top. The same shadow I'd seen on the television screen, but in this photo, it was closer, more defined. It had arms, long, thin arms that seemed to be reaching toward the me in the picture. I turned the photo over. Someone had written on the back in pencil. The handwriting was mine. Day 1 already feels like longer. Below that, in different ink, Day 7, stop counting. And at the bottom, in pen so fresh it was still slightly wet, Day unknown. Does it matter? I set the photo on the dresser and backed away. My hands were shaking. The handwriting was mine. All of it. Different ages, different implements, but definitely my handwriting. Like I'd been writing notes to myself across weeks, months. But I'd only been here one night, hadn't I? I tried to remember checking in. The woman at the desk, the rain, the key with its red tag. But the memory felt thin, uncertain, like something I'd dreamed instead of lived. I picked up my phone. The date showed today. But what was today? When had I arrived? When had this all started? I scrolled through my recent calls. The conversation with Sarah showed up, but the timestamp was wrong. It said I'd called her a week ago. Before that, another call to a number I didn't recognize 2 weeks ago. Before that, my mother, a month ago. My photo gallery was full of pictures I didn't remember taking, all from this room. Me sitting in different positions, different clothes, different expressions, but always the same shadow in the background, getting closer in each image. In the most recent photo, the shadow wasn't behind me anymore. It was standing next to the bed. I looked around the room. No shadow, no sign of anyone else. But the air felt different, occupied, like someone was sharing the space without taking up any room. I walked to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, looked in the mirror. My reflection looked back, normal, alone. But when I reached for the towel, my reflection hesitated, just for a moment, like it was listening to someone I couldn't hear. Then it smiled, not my smile, someone else's, using my face. I backed out of the bathroom and slammed the door. The television was on again, showing the parking lot from above. I could see my window, the red car, the office. And there, walking slowly toward room 7, was a figure in a dark coat. I couldn't see their face, but I knew how they walked, the slight favoring of the left foot, the way they held their shoulders when they were tired. It was me, another me, walking toward my door with the key in her hand. I heard footsteps in the hallway, getting closer, a soft knock on my door. Hello? The voice was mine, but tired, worn down. Is anyone in there? I didn't answer. I think there's been a mistake, the voice continued. The woman at the desk gave me this key, but it says room 7. I think someone might already be staying here. Another knock, more insistent. Please. I just need to know if you're using this room. I can get a different one if... The knocking stopped. I heard the soft scrape of a key in the lock. The door opened. I stood face to face with myself. She looked exactly like me, but older, more tired, like she'd been traveling for a very long time. She smiled. Oh, there you are. Who are you? I'm you, from before or after. Time gets confused in places like this. She stepped into the room and closed the door behind her. Nice place, very quiet. You'll like it here. I want to leave. Of course you do. That's what I said too. Back when I was you. She sat down on the bed, My bed. But leaving isn't really an option anymore. Not once you've been here this long. How long have I been here? Long enough, she said. Look in the mirror. I turned toward the dresser. In the mirror, I could see myself standing in the center of the room. But I could also see her, sitting on the bed. And behind both of us, clear as day, was a shadow. It wasn't a shadow anymore. It was a person, tall and thin and wearing clothes I recognized. It was another me, standing perfectly still, watching both of us with eyes that held too much knowledge about things that hadn't happened yet. We're all here now, the me on the bed said softly. All the versions of you that tried to leave, all the ones that stayed, all the ones that are still checking in. I looked at the photo on the dresser, then at the mirror, then at the woman who was me, but wasn't. How many of us are there? As many as it takes, she said. Outside, I could hear another car pulling into the parking lot. Another me arriving for the first time, ready to discover that room 7 was exactly what she'd been looking for, even if she didn't know it yet. The other me stood up from the bed and walked to the window. She moved like someone who knew the room perfectly, every step deliberate, every gesture familiar. She's here, she said, looking out at the parking lot. Who? The next one. The one who thinks this is her first night. I joined her at the window. Another car had arrived. Blue sedan from the 80s. The same one that had been parked there when I first checked in. Through the office window, I could see the woman at the desk going through her routine, smiling, handing over a key, pointing toward the rooms. How long has this been happening? I asked. As long as it needs to, the other me said. Time doesn't work the same way here. We're all the same person, just experiencing it differently. That doesn't make sense. Nothing here makes sense. That's the point. She turned away from the window. You should sit down. It's easier if you're sitting down. For what? For when you hear yourself ask to stay. I didn't sit down, but I didn't move away from the window either. Outside, someone was walking towards room 7. I couldn't see them clearly, but I knew how they walked. The same way I walked. The same tired shuffle after a long day of driving. The television turned on, but instead of showing the parking lot or static or any of the other strange things it had displayed, it showed something else. A recording of me, sitting on this bed, but younger, less tired, still confused but not yet resigned. In the recording, I was talking to someone off camera, someone I couldn't see. I don't understand, the recorded me was saying. Why can't I leave? A voice answered. My voice. But older, more patient. Because you don't really want to. Of course I want to leave. I have a life, a job, people who are expecting me. Do you? The recorded me looked uncertain. Yes, I think so. When was the last time someone called you? Yesterday? Orient? No. Last week, maybe. What did they want? I don't remember. When was the last time you felt truly comfortable somewhere? The recorded me was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. This room feels comfortable, doesn't it? Number? It feels wrong. Wrong like dangerous? Or wrong like too right? Another long pause, then very quietly. Too right. You've been looking for a place like this your whole life. A place where you don't have to pretend to be someone else. Where you don't have to perform. Where you can just be. This isn't real. Is the life you left behind real? The apartment you never decorated? The job you never cared about? The friends who don't call? The recorded me was crying now. Silent tears that made her face look younger, more honest. I want to stay, she whispered. I know. The recording ended. I stared at the blank screen. That wasn't me. It was, the other me said. It will be. Depends on how you look at it. I never said those things. You will. There was a knock on the door. Software. Tentative. Hello? The voice was mine. Fresh. Confused. I think there might be someone in my room. The other me walked to the door and opened it. Standing in the hallway was another version of myself. This one looked exactly like I had when I first arrived. Tired from driving, confused by the strangeness, still believing this was all a mistake that could be corrected. Oh, the new me said, I'm sorry. The woman at the desk gave me this key, but... Room 7, the other me said. Yes, that's right. But you're already here. We're all already here. The new me looked past her and saw me standing by the window. Her face went through a series of expressions: confusion, recognition, fear, and finally, something that might have been relief. Are you me? She asked. We're all you, I said. She stepped into the room. The door closed behind her, though none of us had touched it. I don't understand what's happening, she said. You will, the other me said. It just takes time. How much time? All of it. The new me sat down on the bed. She looked around the room with the same expression I'd had when I first arrived. Taking inventory, looking for explanations, still believing there was a logical way out of this. My car is gone, she said. Cars aren't necessary here, the other me said. But how do I leave? Why would you want to leave? The question hung in the air. I wanted to answer it, to give her all the reasons I'd been telling myself. But when I opened my mouth, nothing came out. Because I couldn't remember why I wanted to leave. The television turned on again. This time it showed the room we were standing in, all three of us, but from an impossible angle, like the camera was positioned inside the wall, and in the background, barely visible, were more figures, shadows that might have been people, all standing perfectly still, all watching. How many of us are there? The new me asked. As many as it takes, the other me said. For what? For you to stop asking questions. The new me looked at me, then at the other me, then at the mirror above the dresser. In the reflection, the room was full. Dozens of versions of us, all different ages, all different stages of understanding, all perfectly content to be exactly where we were. I think I want to stay, the new me said quietly. I know, we said in unison. And somewhere in the distance, I could hear another car pulling into the parking lot, another me, arriving for the first time. Ready to discover that room 7 was exactly what she'd been looking for. Ready to join the rest of us in the space between leaving and staying. Ready to understand that some questions don't need answers, just company. The newest version of me fell asleep on the bed almost immediately. Not the restless, confused sleep I'd had on my first night. Deep sleep, peaceful sleep, like she'd finally found a place where she could rest. The other me and I sat in the 2 chairs by the window. We didn't talk much. There wasn't much to say anymore. We understood each other perfectly. Does it get easier? I asked. Easier isn't the right word, she said. It gets more like what it always was. Outside, the parking lot had filled up. More cars than should have been able to fit in the space. But somehow they all found room, all parked in perfect rows, all waiting patiently for their owners to stop trying to leave. "When did you stop fighting it?" I asked. "When I realized I wasn't fighting the room," she said. "I was fighting myself." The television showed us sitting there, talking quietly while our newest version slept. But in the TV image there were more chairs, more versions of us, a whole circle of selves having the same conversation. "Are we real?" I asked. "We're as real as we've ever been," she said. "Maybe more real. Here, we don't have to pretend to be someone else." I thought about my apartment, my job, the life I'd driven away from for a weekend that never happened. It all felt distant now, borrowed, like I'd been wearing someone else's clothes for years without realizing it. "Do you miss it?" I asked. "Miss what?" "Out there, the world." She was quiet for a long time. "Do you miss being uncomfortable all the time? Do you miss pretending to want things you didn't really want? Do you miss performing happiness for people who weren't really listening?" I didn't answer, because the answer was no. The room around us had changed while we talked. Not dramatically, just small shifts. The walls were a softer color now. The carpet felt newer under our feet. The bed looked more comfortable. "It's learning," the other me said. "Learn what?" "What we need, what makes us happy, what makes us stay." On the nightstand, my phone showed 17 missed calls, all from numbers I didn't recognize. When I tried to call them back, they went straight to voicemail. Messages from people who claimed to know me. People who said they were worried. People who wanted me to come back to a life I couldn't quite remember choosing. "They're not real," the other me said. "How do you know?" "Because if they were real, they would have found you by now." I deleted the messages, all of them. The phone felt lighter in my hand afterward. The newest me stirred in her sleep. She was dreaming, and her dreams were playing on the television. Images of highways that led nowhere, hotels that existed only at night, parking lots full of cars with no drivers. "She's starting to understand," the other me said. "Understand what?" "That this is where she belongs." I looked around the room. It felt different now, not like a motel room at all, like a home, a place where I could be myself without explanation or apology. The mirror above the dresser showed us all clearly now. Dozens of versions of me, different ages, different clothes, different stages of acceptance, but all peaceful, all content, all exactly where we belonged. "What happens next?" I asked. "Nothing happens," the other me said. "Nothing needs to happen. We're here, we're home. What else is there?" The newest me opened her eyes. She looked around the room like she was seeing it for the first time, which in a way, she was. "This is where I live now," she said, not a question, a statement. "Yes," we said. "It's nice," she said. "Quiet, peaceful." "Yes," we said. She got up and walked to the window. Outside, more cars were arriving. More versions of us were checking in. The cycle continuing as it had always continued, as it would always continue. "Do you think anyone misses us?" she asked. "No," the other me said. "We're still there, different versions of us, living the lives we used to live, going through the motions, pretending to be happy. And we're here," I said, "being actually happy." "It's a good arrangement," the newest me said. The television showed the office now, The woman behind the desk was smiling as she handed out keys. Room 7, room 7, room 7, always room 7. She's not really a desk clerk, is she? The newest me asked. No, the other me said. She's us too, from way back, from when we first learned how to help ourselves find this place. How long ago was that? Time doesn't matter here, I said. There's only now. There's only this room. There's only us. The newest me nodded. She understood. We all understood. Outside, I could hear another car pulling into the parking lot. Another me, arriving for the first time, ready to discover that room 7 was exactly what she'd been looking for. Ready to learn that leaving was never really an option. Ready to understand that sometimes the best thing you can do is stop running from yourself and to just stay. Sunlight woke me up. Real sunlight. Warm and golden and completely impossible. I was in my apartment. My real apartment. Lying in my own bed with my own sheets and my own pillows. Everything exactly as I'd left it. The books on the nightstand. The clothes draped over the chair. The coffee mug I'd abandoned on the dresser. But nothing smelled right. I sat up slowly. The room looked perfect. Too perfect. Like a photograph of my apartment rather than the actual place. Every detail correct, but somehow hollow underneath. The clock on the nightstand showed 7 in the morning. The hands moved when I watched them. Smooth and steady and completely normal. But I could hear the buzzing. That same electrical hum from the motel's vacancy sign. Very faint. Coming from somewhere I couldn't identify. I got up and walked to the window. Outside was my street, my neighborhood, cars parked where they should be, trees in the right places, everything normal and familiar and wrong. I opened the window to let in fresh air, but there was no air, just the illusion of air, movement without substance, like breathing inside a painting. My phone sat on the charger where I always left it, but when I picked it up, the screen was blank, not dead, blank. Like someone had erased everything and forgotten to put anything back. I tried to remember how I'd gotten here, driving away from the motel, finding a road that led somewhere real, but the memory felt thin, borrowed, like something I'd read in a book rather than lived. The bathroom mirror showed me perfectly. But when I brushed my teeth, I noticed something. My reflection was brushing its teeth too, but it was using a different toothbrush, one I'd never seen before. When I finished and put my toothbrush back in the holder, my reflection kept brushing, for just a moment longer than it should have. I backed away from the mirror. In the living room, everything was exactly as I'd left it. Magazines on the coffee table, throw pillows arranged just so, the television remote in its proper place. But the photograph on the end table was different. It showed me and Sarah at her wedding, both of us laughing, both of us young and happy. But I was standing in a different position than I remembered, wearing a different dress, holding flowers I'd never touched. I picked up the photo and studied it carefully. Every detail was perfect, but it was documenting a day that hadn't quite happened the way I remembered it happening. The television turned on by itself. No static this time, just a clear image of a motel. The Pine View Motor Lodge, yellow lights glowing in the darkness, red doors lined up like soldiers, and there, sitting in room 7, were all the versions of me. They looked comfortable, happy, at peace, in a way I'd never been in this apartment, in this life, in this version of reality that felt like wearing clothes that didn't quite fit. One of them looked directly at the camera, directly at me. "Are you happy there?" she asked. I opened my mouth to say yes, to insist that this was real and right and exactly where I belonged. But no sound came out. "It's lonely, isn't it?" another version said, pretending to be someone you're not, living a life that feels borrowed. I turned off the television, but I could still hear their voices, soft and patient and understanding. The apartment felt larger now, emptier, like it was trying to hold more space than it actually contained. I walked to the closet and opened the door. Inside, instead of my clothes, was a small room. Beige walls, brown carpet, no windows, no air. Room 7, empty now, waiting. I closed the closet door and backed away. The buzzing was getting louder, more insistent, like something calling me home. My phone rang. I picked it up without looking at the number. "Reception," a familiar voice said. "How can I help you?" "I'm not at the motel," I said. "Of course you are," the woman said. Her voice was kind, patient. "You're always at the motel. This is just an intermission. I'm in my apartment. Are you happy there?" I looked around the perfect replica of my life. Everything in its place, everything exactly as it should be. "No," I whispered. "We're waiting for you," the woman said. "Room 7 is ready whenever you are." "How do I get back?" "You never left." The line went dead. I set the phone down and walked back to the closet. The door was open now. Room 7 waited beyond it, warm light spilling out. The sound of quiet conversation, the feeling of home. I could see them in there, all the versions of me, living peacefully in a space that made sense, being themselves without apology or explanation. "We saved your spot," one of them called. I looked back at the apartment, my life, my reality. It felt like a costume I'd been wearing for years, beautiful maybe, well made, but not mine. I stepped toward the closet. The vacancy sign flickered in the distance. But it didn't say vacancy anymore. It said welcome home. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, I knew exactly where I belonged. I stepped through the door. Behind me, the apartment continued to exist, perfectly preserved, ready for the next version of me to wake up and wonder why nothing felt quite right. But I wasn't worried about her. She'd find her way back eventually. We always do. The room that doesn't exist during the day is always there when you need it most. And we're all still there, waiting in the space between leaving and staying, discovering that some questions don't need answers. Just company. Just the quiet understanding that home isn't a place you find. It's a place that finds you.